It's going to be fun today. We're going to be speaking about SEO, which is a bit of a new topic for us. But before we begin, I want to point out that there is a CC button down below, which you can click for closed captions. And there's a Q&A button for the end when we will do Q&A. So please keep those in mind. And in the meantime, let's get started by introducing the panelists. Let me invite, first of all, Uli. Would you please unmute, turn on your video, and tell us a bit about you?
Uli Münker, I'm the in-house SEO at Thomson Reuters, the software for accountants and lawyers. I've been in online since 2003 and full-time in-house SEO since 2007. So I've always been in the enterprise in-house SEO track since I can remember, since 2007. So initially I started in companies like Businessweek, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, which was heavily on the media side. And then lately I've gone more in-house to the B2B side. So that was McKesson and now Thomson Reuters. And in all these roles, in all these in-house roles, I've been either the only in-house SEO or just a very, very small team. And in most cases, I was the one starting it. So I'm very familiar with those topic about SEO and how to get it started in-house.
Hey everybody, my name is Jordan Quaglietta. I'm a contractor at NBC right now. I work on the enterprise level for SEO. I worked in the past with small, medium, and large companies, mainly in the e-commerce world, but I've been in SEO for the last 5 to 6 years. Looking forward to learning more here, and also will be doing some instructing around SEO this summer. And so, yeah, I work with all sizes of companies. I really enjoy the e-commerce space a lot because you can really quantify in dollars what your offerings and what your enhancements do. And so I'm just really happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jordan. Eric, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Franzen. I've been working with Joe and the team at Diamond for many years now. I came into SEO through the niche area of technology known as semantic web. The part of that that's most relevant to SEO is structured data. I ran the conference where schema.org was announced many years ago, and 2 years prior to that, I was implementing structured data on client websites to great success. So thrilled to be with such a great panel today.
Thank you, Eric. And last but certainly not least is Laura Lepay.
Hey guys, great to see everybody. I'm Laura Lepay. I've been working in SEO for about 20 years, mostly enterprise related stuff. So in-house, I've been at CNET, Yahoo, Netflix, right now Comcast, and Xfinity. And most of what I do is work on what a company needs to set up processes, tools, people, teams, in order to get an SEO program up and running and aiming at the same business goals that everyone else is at.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Now, I'd like this to be a little bit conversational, so I'm going to ask often questions for the entire panel. Feel free to join in if you like this particular answer, or if you have something that you want to follow up with another speaker. Don't be shy. We want to make this fun and conversational. So let's start with the first question. Can you describe the SEO program in your organization? And if nobody wants to jump in, I'll just say, Laura, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So we have a team, we sit on the marketing team in Comcast, and the team that I'm on, it's lifecycle marketing. So it's all digital marketing, and our SEO team covers Comcast Business, Xfinity, Xfinity Mobile, basically those areas. We are constantly looking at how our team is formed and what everyone's working on. And so right now, we're looking at kind of splitting it up in between content SEOs and technical SEOs. We also have writers, a writer SEO, and the cat, sorry. Most of that is for Xfinity and Comcast. And on the Comcast business side, we've got one SEO who's kind of doing everything for Comcast Business and Xfinity Mobile, but we're looking to hire another one. So if anyone's interested, definitely hit me up. But it's a pretty small group. We work with everybody, and including our NBC friends. We just started working together with some people over there. Comcast is a huge business, so there's a lot of SEOs everywhere. That's just my team.
Thanks, Laura. Looks like Jordan, you got pinged, so why don't you go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Joe. It's pretty much, yeah, just as Laura said, we kind of work in a large team. Working for the NBC network on an enterprise level, and that really it takes into account like millions of pages, right? And so what I try to do is consult with web devs and software engineers to make sure that we're applying the best metadata and schema markup and things like that across a variety of different page templates, right? So each template really requires different attention, and different kinds of markup. And so that's kind of what I do day to day. Create tickets, sit in meetings. Hopefully the tickets make sense and are clear, and just try to maintain the peace with the devs.
Always a good decision. Uli?
So yeah, in our case, we have 3 SEOs like me, and they are spread out according to segment, or business unit, basically 1 per segment. And we are actually currently under product because of some organizational changes, which I usually it's a little bit unusual to be under product.
Thank you. Eric, do you want to describe what being a search lord is about?
Sure. The title came out a bit tongue-in-cheek, but the primary role is I interface with the different parts of the enterprise of Diamond's customers. So we're working with content creators, we're working with engineers to determine the best ways to implement SEO throughout an organization. We really try to go holistic and multidisciplinary by interfacing with as many different departments as we can to make sure that it's a comprehensive, successful result.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
So now I love this question because it's really important, and every organization is different when it comes to SEO. I remember when I first met Laura, she was SEO at Yahoo, which was then really considered a search engine at the time, and people were wondering why even do you need to have SEO at a search engine. But you have all of these interesting internal, external possibilities in terms of SEO. So my question is, what are the pros and cons of hiring an external search agency versus doing SEO in-house? And what about doing both? Jordan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's, definitely pros and cons to both. When you hire an outside agency, you can kind of hold them to be a bit more accountable, but at the same time, they're a bit more thin spread with the number of clients that are probably managing. And at times as a client, you don't really have the kind of visibility, right, into how many hours per week they're actually really giving you, as opposed to an in-house. And so, I mean, definitely if I had to choose between the two, I definitely prefer working in-house. And I do like the relation between the two. I think it's best to have an in-house SEO, and then if you have a little bit of money in your budget, and you can have an outside agency consulting with you to work hand in hand. I really strongly believe that that's the best approach.
Thanks. Yeah,
I totally agree with Jordan. Working with in-house within within external agencies. It's great, and I've done it a lot in the past. So in terms of pros and cons, obviously it's different things. If you start with an agency, it's cheaper. If you're just starting out, if you want to make a business case for SEO. The other pro is certainly to have an expert voice that like this consultant voice that can always verify things. The con is certainly if the agency is working on multiple clients, so it's not really that invested in-house as much as the in-house person would do. If you think about going in-house, this in-house SEO is better connected with those individual players, because it is important, because an in-house is often disruptive. Or SEO in general is often disruptive. If you ask those individuals to do things differently than they did in the past. And so having an in-house person there who can influence, who can, sweeten the deal with some cookies or something makes it a lot easier. And also just in-house SEOs, they often go by the 80-20 rule on just 80% just evangelizing and spreading the word versus really doing the part.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, it's hard to say, which is better as a blanket approach. I mean, you're going to have different situations, and each situation needs to be evaluated on its merits. The benefit of an in-house is all of that irreplaceable institutional knowledge that comes along with that, and the access to the different parts of the enterprise, the different individuals, the people who are doing the work on a daily basis. Being able to talk directly to someone in sales or marketing or the C-suite, or pick a department, and I could make a case for why the SEO might need to talk to them at some point. So that access is also really important. So even if working with an outside agency, I highly recommend that you identify a champion in-house that can interface with that agency. Of course, the flip side of the coin of the institutional knowledge is institutional baggage. And a lot of times an in-house person may have the approach of, well, it's the way we've always done it. That's why we do it that way. So having those fresh eyes come in from an agency perspective can also bring a lot of value.
I
Thanks.
agree with everything everyone else said.
Okay. Okay, so I'll give you a new one then. I'm just imagining, I'm trying to think about what the audience would be interested in. And I think a lot of people are like, well, what does SEO in the enterprise look like, right? So now imagine that you're hired, they're the first SEO that's hired into an enterprise organization. And it's a beast. These organizations are massive. They're in different geographies. There's so many different departments, probably so many different businesses. And you're coming in and you have to wrangle this beast across the different layers of the organization. And I can make this question broad or really specific, but feel free to just tag on to whatever aspect you want. Like, which organizations would you go after first, or which are the most important parts of the organization that you would have to hit? Like, how would you approach that when you're first hired to develop an SEO program for the enterprise?
There's so many things to do from the get-go. It's really I love those kind of challenges. So like, I think the first thing I always ask for is data and business goals. So like, what are you trying to do, and what does your data say about how we're getting there? And then you kind of need to look at like what teams are involved and what teams can I have access to, and then building it out from there. So when you can find what the data always tells everything, right? So when you can find the pain points or the areas of opportunity there, that can give you some places where to look in terms of like, here are some of the things we need to do. It's easy to also tell if you're new to if you've got a brand new SEO program and you haven't been doing SEO, then it's super easy to know who you need to work with. Who are the developers? Do you have a PR team? How is sales involved? Looking at all these different places. If there's already SEO in-house and they're just looking to build on it, then it's the same thing. Like, who are you working with now, and how are we getting to those things that are going to drive these numbers? That's part of it. And then if you're going to hire people, who are the right people that are behind that? So if really the biggest pain point is like technical SEO, you definitely need to get a technical SEO in there. If the biggest pain point is they've got SEO running on a technical side, but they don't really have anyone doing strategy or using editorial or things like that, then you need to get somebody from an editorial side in there. And that could be contractor or devs. And then on another layer of things, you need reporting. So you're in there and you're putting things together and you're building a program, but really what you want to do is have reporting that not only answers questions for different layers of exec down to SEO, but also, it helps people understand that the work that they did makes a difference. And so how can you get that kind of communication going within the company? And those are just the things off the top of my head.
Yeah, you could probably spend a year on what you do, because there's work. But I love your approach of data, right? And you hope that there is data there to begin with. Like, are they even tracking the data across all their properties, right?
True. So many times there's not.
Yeah. So you have to start there. Hey, make sure to add that in, and then from there, analyze the data. And once you have the data analyzed, then you can build a plan, right?
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Uli.
Yeah, so data is very useful also because then you can discover some weaknesses that you can see on certain templates. It's not on par to the other templates, and then you can explore processes like why is this type of template weaker or is not as strong in SEO as this. So what is there in the process where SEO is not considered, or that certain teams are not, not that strong in SEO. So this is then when you can get started with approaching those and teaching those teams about SEO. I think another aspect, I think is useful also if you start with an audit, which you can either do, in-house, but it's a lot of work, or just get an audit done externally.
Yeah. So then this is a great point. It makes me think, well, how do you know what to audit when you have a massive organization that you don't even know, right? So you probably need to ask someone, well, what's our list of properties, right?
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
What's the list of properties? You give the business goals. That is a starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. And is there typically like one group that would know all of that? Like maybe DevOps would know, since you have to go through them to spin up a domain. I mean, I don't know how that would look.
Yeah, and in enterprise, it's tough to discover all the different properties you own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, the approach towards an enterprise business, I feel, is completely different than dealing with a small business. A lot of times, like a smaller company, might be on WordPress or Shopify, and you can just hop in the driver's seat and make a bunch of changes right away and download plugins, and kind of sometimes you wear both hats as like a SEO and a entry-level developer per se. But a lot of times, I think, just to resonate kind of what Uli and what Lara said, I think it's really important with looking at the data, running a full crawl. If you have resources in the past that another, let's say, external agency has run, like an audit, look at that information, decipher it, and create a game plan and roll out from there.
Thanks, Eric. Anything to add? And if not, you want to say something about audits, like what does an audit look like for somebody that hasn't gone through it?
Well, I do want to add something actually before I jump on that, and that is Laura made a couple of really good points right up front, data being one of them. Data is critical. I come from a data background. I love data, so I'm an easy sell there on the importance of data. But the other thing she mentioned was business goals. And I think from an audit standpoint, it's most useful to go broad, to look at all of those different properties, to find, you may find missed opportunities in things that have been neglected for a long time, but are actually performing very well from an SEO standpoint. How can you amplify those signals? You're going to find a lot of information in the detailed data. But then in deciding what to focus on, you really have to go back to those business goals. And that's where people in the C-suite can be very useful. People in the marketing department, in the sales department, people who spend their days focused on the business goals of the enterprise, so that you can then prioritize what you've found in the audit. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, no, great points. All right, let's come back to you, Laura. Where in the organization should the SEO department sit?
So Julie, you said product was a weird place, but honestly, I think product, in my experience, product has been the best place where I've sat. I think at Netflix, it was, I was sitting on engineering and I was working with product most closely. So it was, even though I was on the engineering team, I was actually physically sitting with product, and product being the website in that case. And really, honestly, that's my favorite place to be, because a lot of time, it just depends on how things are set up, but a lot of times product will have governance over marketing and dev and accessibility and all the things that need to go into product. And so being real close and tight with them and being like, you know, having their ear is important, even if you're not on that team. I think, you know, in my experience, it's worked out really well. But I've also sat in marketing teams and engineering teams, and because you're working with everybody, I think we make it work no matter what. But I do enjoy product because of the accountability that, you know, sitting on the product team that governs all these other, if it's set up that way, that governs all these other teams, you know, that really helps to get things done.
Yes.
Yeah, Laura, I agree. Sitting with product has really its advantages. I definitely experienced that in terms of getting resources for doing changes. Absolutely. I was just saying that in the past, I've always been under marketing, but I then definitely experienced that fighting for resources, for tech resources, has been hard.
It makes some sense under marketing too, because it's a marketing channel, you know, like in your data, it's just one of those marketing channels, and it makes sense there too. Yeah,
and for both of you also, like what does SEO cost, and is being attached to product somehow helpful in that maybe you can say, hey, this is what it cost and this is what came back as a result of it, where you can kind of get metrics on the cost benefit analysis? Yes.
I just wanted to give someone else a chance to answer, but I think, you know, in my, that's such a crazy question to try to answer. Like, it's like what does dev cost, right? Like, it could range. It could be so different. You know, from a salary perspective, I've seen, I think, in the range of, you know, around 50 to 250. Just so many variables involved in that, in the US at least. And then, you know, if you're contracting somebody, you know, usually for enterprise, like 10K a month plus is the going rate, I think, probably still. But it also depends on, you know, if you have SEO contractors, they could be focused on so many different things. There's a huge variety of things that you could be doing. So I think that depends. And then, you know, being able to say, was it worth it, is really interesting. I mean, I don't know that many people actually really look at that. You know, honestly, I don't know that had that many people saying it. Have we, you know, looked at like the salary, like what do we spend on an SEO team and what's it bringing in for us? Either that, or like, what are we spending on a contractor and what's it bringing for us? I honestly don't think I've personally had anyone like delve into that.
I think this is so crucial to do that. Look at, and actually do that in those companies that I work at, that I'll look at how much traffic is coming in from SEO, and then attribute that to the revenue that's coming in. So whether it's advertising driven or like B2B, how much of the leads are coming in from organic traffic, and then how much is the revenue, at least a rough number from the revenue that's coming in per lead, so that you can then, give a number, a total number that's coming in from organic search, and then compare that.
Clarify that makes so much sense. And I was thinking of it as like how much are we paying our team, and that what you're mentioning right there makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, and so if you then compare how much are you, paying for salaries for SEOs, which is a fraction to what's coming in. And then if you can also look at the bigger picture, how about the other channels? What are you spending for, let's say, paid search? Often there is a larger number of employees, and then plus the budget for paid search. So if you look at what's coming in versus what are you paying, then SEO is a very, very profitable channel.
Yeah, I would expect so. So now, Jordan and Eric, would you like to riff off of what you heard? Anything that you want to add there? And if not, I'm going to just add a couple of thoughts that you might go into as well, which is like what kind of business benefits most from SEO? And as we were talking about, the cost benefit analysis, maybe e-commerce there makes it easier to directly say, okay, this is how much revenue is coming in as a result. And then I'll add another thing. What about paid search? How do you know what your budget is for paid search? So Jordan, Eric, either one of you.
Okay. So I really fully agree with everything I heard from Uli and Laura. I think it's critical to identify not only what the economic drivers are, but then as you're looking at those, as you're looking at your initial business goals, tie those to the KPIs. When you're first establishing what your key performance indicators are going to be, do that based on the data, based on the information you have about budget and what an inbound lead is worth, because then you'll have something to measure on the back end.
Thanks. And just to make sure everybody gets that, KPIs, for those who aren't used to these terms, key performance indicator, and it's really like what are your goals, or what are your metrics that you're trying to reach, and you really want to track that. Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of when we talk about quantifying salaries, how much should the cost of an SEO, really be? I think, there's a lot of things to really unpack there, right? Sometimes you work with these larger enterprise companies that really do have the budget. Sometimes you're working with smaller and medium companies that quite frankly don't. And I've kind of learned early that all money isn't good money, and so you really want to make sure you're offering clients the best, kind of the best bang for their buck, and what really makes sense, right? Do they need a robust backlink strategy? If they do, that's going to, impact the cost, by a lot, right? And, looking at the data, just as everyone else has said, I think is extremely important. So, I think to put a number on it, right, a consultant can go anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour plus. And then, a junior level SEO is going to make maybe like, 1 to 2 year SEO make between 50 to 70. And then, I think SEO is in such high demand right now with the pandemic, people going from brick and mortar, moving over to digital. And that's, we're seeing the numbers, raise up, which is great for us. And so, that can be anywhere from 80 to, 250K.
Thanks. So can you touch some more, like I tried to kind of bring this in, maybe touch a little more on the type of businesses that really like work well with SEO. Is it really any business? For example, we had an audience question, somebody that works at a network wanted to know, how do you do SEO for a network? right? Does it all work equally well?
For a network of sites, or like?
No, like an OTT network.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think it's such a cool question, because it feels like, people are searching for everything out there. But there are cases where either, an entire company may not need as much, or, or maybe some of the companies, different offshoots, or, different things that they're working on really don't have as much search volume. And one that I can remember vaguely is, there was a company I had worked with at one point. I think they paid me like $2,500 or something like that to look at keyword research and determine that exact question. Are people searching for what we want to do? And what they wanted to do was provide healthcare to enterprise clients. And they wanted to know if people were searching for what, like, companies in the healthcare that they provide, and really specifically what they provided within that healthcare too. And the search volume wasn't what they had expected it to be, so they just put the money up front for, that kind of research, to say, like, what are people searching for? What are those things? And, let us know, if they got an idea in the end of, like, okay, here are the things people are searching for. Here's the amount, here's the volume, here's what you're up against. And, now you know how much you should be investing in this, which was probably a lot less than I think they originally thought. But you never know, because things change. Because I remember doing the same thing for cloud computing once, and no one was searching for it. And now.
That might have changed a touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what if you're an enterprise and you have your budget, but you're sitting there? Well, imagine that you're a shark, right? From Shark Tank, and you have a business being presented in front of you. Is there like a formula that, okay, if I'm going to spend $1, I need to make $2 or $1.50? Is there some kind of formula or something that the folks that don't know how to put this together, that yes, this is how much you should get out of the spend, or don't even bother spending money on paid search? Anybody can take that.
I think there is about, on average, I think there is about 40+% that companies get from organic search, meaning that would be an additional 40% that they get, from that. And so obviously the more SEO you do, the better. However, it's not that you have, at some point it's diminishing returns, meaning there is not, that you can completely go crazy. That doesn't work like this.
Yeah. Thanks.
So to a question that you asked, Joe, about, is SEO really for any organization, for any business? I think you have to go back to those original business goals and ask, why do you have a web presence? Are you putting a presence on the web because you want it to be discovered? You want people to find you through search? If so, I would say you probably need an SEO effort. To go really small at the other end of the spectrum from enterprise, my local barber doesn't need a website. What he does need is, he needs people, when they're looking on their phone and say, I need a haircut, where can I get that near me? I just moved to town. They need an address. They need the hours that he's open. They need a phone number to call. They need to know if he's open now. So you go back to those core business goals, and that's where you have to start your exploration of, do we need SEO? Did we just put a website on the web, which happens far more often than you would think, and expect that people would come? If you do no effort on SEO, you won't be optimized for search engines, and your competitors will eat your lunch.
Definitely. All right, well, I'm going to ask a question, and since I have you here, Eric, you probably know this name. Andreas Gebhardt has a question. How much of SEO in the enterprise can be done as a one-off project? The team comes in, gives guidance, sets up processes, versus must be an ongoing process. And he also did clarification: project equals team comes in and leaves again after a short period of time. And that's for anybody. Anyone want to take that?
One key factor to look at is how often is the content changing, and how often are you getting new content added into the system, because that new content will also need to be optimized.
Yeah, that and the competitive landscape too. It really is an ongoing process. It really is, and unless you know, like Eric said, if you're not changing it much, that's one thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you to not do SEO though, unless there's really nothing you're up against. Like if you're doing something so unique that you don't have a lot of competition in the search result. You know, it really is kind of an ongoing thing, which I think kind of, you know, makes me think back to the earlier question about like whether you would hire in-house or hire contractors or agencies. And, you know, having worked at an agency, so many times you put your heart and soul into this work and you interview everybody at the company and you get to know everything about what they do and their audiences, and you do the work and you hand it over and you put it on a desk and that's it. And it doesn't see much more from that. And it happens time and time again. And so like having that champion in-house, like you mentioned, or even just being in-house really is important, because it is an ongoing process. The Google search results are always changing. The Google algorithms are always changing. The competition's always changing, even if you're not doing a whole lot, you know, yourself. And you kind of usually need to stay up to date with that. I'm really more interested in I'm going to keep thinking about it during this, so the question of like, what can you do once and done? I think that's an interesting question. I feel like it's more like if you set up a reporting system internally, you know, or I don't know, hire an agency or a team or something like that. Like that's once and done. But I'm trying to think of like an SEO thing that would be once and done. It's an interesting question.
In media, it comes up where you have like a show that's going to go for 3 months, and so you want to come in, blast out that SEO, and then go, which kind of leads into my next question: is the temporality of SEO. What is the timeline of an SEO project? Particularly, I love thinking about the media space where they might have licensed content that has a sunrise date. It's going to go live on this date. The series is going to end on this date. Maybe it'll come back next year with season 2. So what goes into the planning in terms of that timeline? When do you start? What happens during that start period? What happens so we've worked a lot on American Idol, or the whole Diamond team really came from American Idol. So we would have like, you have the launch date, and then you might have like a charity special, and then you have like the voting, then you have like the top 24, the top 12, Hollywood Week, all of these aspects. And then at the end, you know, the who gets declared the winner. So you have lots of these opportunities that are very timed. Just imagine that you're doing SEO for American Idol or for some TV show. How do you organize that for anyone? Jordan, we haven't heard from you in a minute.
Sorry, I think it's a really good question. You know, I think it really depends on the approach you want to take, like having a sunrise and sunset date on a show. Let's say you're working with American Idol. But, you know, I'm a bit curious now, because if you do have a fan base, right, you do want to keep them engaged year round, right, for season 2, for voting. I think probably when it comes to timing, the most important thing to do, because we all know that SEO does take time, you know, for your site to be crawled, for people to really engage with your content. I think you want to give yourself a good runway. So at least, you know, maybe 3 to 6 months before a show starts. And then if you have the resources to keep on pumping out content, to keep on optimizing, I say, you know, don't press on the brakes regardless if you have a sunset date or not between seasons. If you can keep on moving, keeping your fans engaged off season and recycling old content, you know, I think that's kind of the way to go.
All right, Uli, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, if it's those temporary content, that gets a little tricky there. It applies to whatever you used as a show, or even in e-commerce. Product is temporarily not available, but is it coming back or is it never coming back? That gets then into the deep of the SEO, should you redirect, should you keep it there and saying it's currently not available? That's probably when you really need an SEO for that.
Yeah.
There's not an easy answer.
Okay.
I'd love to just go into like a little piece of what we did at Netflix that I thought was really kind of fun. When we'd have a show come out, PR would announce it, and we wouldn't have a page for maybe a month sometimes. So we'd announce it, IMDb would put it up, Wikipedia would put it up, everyone would start talking about it. All these pages are out there on the show, but not one for us. And so but we didn't always have all the stuff for the content for the page, right? We'd have like a title, we'd know who's producing it, not much else, maybe some box art, usually not actually. And so we worked with PR to do a couple things because the whole idea was to outrank IMDb and Wikipedia, which, sometimes that worked, not always. They're behemoths. But we had PR put a link. So we'd launch a page, even though the page didn't have a whole lot on it, it would have as much as we had. And all that stuff just gets piped in. So the page is there. As the information is available, it gets piped into the page. But mostly a blankish page is there. And if you go to a Netflix show page now, and you go to the bottom, like the stuff that's coming, that's the kind of page that goes out. And so it would be timed with the press release. The press release would link to that, so that when the press release goes out, first of all, it's got a link in it to that page, and which is like a vote. And so that gave it some oomph from the start, right? Like, it got a little bit of mojo behind it. And we had a page up before IMDb and Wikipedia, which would give us a head start on rankings. And then the journalists that would pick up those press releases, a lot of times they will copy it, and that link will be in there. And so we'd be getting links from the journalists. So that worked out really well for us. But there is a whole time period thing, like you were mentioning, of prepping and being ready with the page, and then being ready with each, the trailer coming out, and then the season opening up, and then each episode, and then the ending of the season, and then keeping it going in between. And one company that I've been watching that I think does it really well is AMC. They've got some good SEOs there.
Yeah.
I like Better Call Saul. I don't even know when the last time there was a Better Call Saul episode that, a new episode or new season, but they're still doing stuff on social, and I'm still like totally engaged. So yeah, I think they do a really good job.
Yeah, and the new movie was pretty cool. The Nobody movie with Bob Odenkirk, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You brought up something interesting that brought back some memories in terms of outranking IMDb. I remember like, we're the authoritative source. And then when a judge goes away and we're instructed to remove the page, it's like, no, you want to have that page so you can be authoritative, for every single aspect of the show. But, there's different considerations at a network, obviously. Eric, any semantics that go into the temporality of SEO?
So yeah, I wanted to actually take a step back when we're thinking about this issue of temporality. We never, we didn't do on this webinar, and I think it was smart to not do, because we probably would have had a ton of different answers. We never defined SEO. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and give you my definition of SEO, which is, it's the practice of altering a website's content for discovery, better visibility, and use. And what I mean by that, for discovery, is your stuff being found. Now, a lot of people who are maybe vaguely familiar with SEO will start with the assumption that the people finding their stuff, the people they want to find their stuff, are their viewers, their customers. But there's an extra step there. Is your stuff being found by the search engines? That's kind of the first question. Then visibility, is your stuff being shown to the people looking for whatever information they're looking for? And then use, how, where, and when is your stuff being delivered? So in the case of this temporal case, you think about a popular show like American Idol. The search engines might ramp up their usual time frame. If you're doing a typical SEO project, it can take months to be discovered by the search engines to really see an effect. But if you take into account that the search engines are being hit by a lot of queries, a lot of requests for what's coming up on this next week's episode of American Idol, who are the judges going to be, what happened now that X host has left, they're going to be looking for information, authoritative information, to deliver to their searchers on their platform. So as an enterprise owner, as a publisher, if you can publish that information in an authoritative way, putting a lot of structured data behind it, saying this is the facts of this situation, and we are the publishers, we're the owner of this show, we're the publishers behind it, and push that out to the search engines, they're going to be thrilled. They're not going to wait several months. And if you have successfully built up some authority and trust with the search engines prior to that episode, you're going to have even better success pushing that data out there to them. So that's,
Thanks.
yes, there's a lot that can be done with structured data and in attacking that problem.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to ask my final question, then I'm going to see, probably take a couple of questions from the audience. So please look at the Q&A and ask your questions below. Accessibility and SEO, how do they work well together? Are they connected in any way? Where I really think about this is we've been doing an accessibility in the enterprise series as well. And what was really interesting is that a lot of the accessibility SMEs would say that they partner in a sense with the security groups, with the SEO groups, because what do they all want? They want when a new web page goes up, when a new mobile app, when anything comes out, that there's a checklist that goes through one place so that you can say, yes, SEO said you're good. Accessibility says you're good. Security says you're good. How do the two interact in your experience? Have you had any experience seeing them interact? This is open for anybody.
I think the one thing that I feel like we always share with the accessibility teams is that we're always trying to get in everywhere. You know, like the SEO team and the accessibility team, we like have each other's backs. Like, hey, you know, this is going out, by the way, get in there. You know, we're always trying to get in on what's going out. The one thing I really love about the accessibility teams, you know, if you know, are lucky enough to have an accessibility team at your company, is that you know, what they're doing on that team is really genuinely, honestly for good, you know, and it makes me really just proud that we have something like that, and you know, and in some companies, you know, not everybody has it.
Yeah.
We both struggle though. And so like when we do have them at the companies that I've been in, when we do have them, it's one of the first things I do. My first day at Netflix, it was the first thing I asked about, you know, like it's not only is it important, but it's really fun because you can work with the teams there to see what are they working on and how is what you're working on overlap with what we're working on, and how can we work together on those things. And, you know, if you think about it at a high level, Google is a bot. It doesn't have eyes and ears, you know, it's just going through and crawling the web and looking for signals, tagging and structures and things like that. So there's a lot of similarities in what we're both trying to do, you know, in terms of optimizing for our audiences. And I do wish that it was a bigger thing. I wish it was more known. And more utilized, you know, not only accessibility, but the combination of accessibility and SEO at companies.
Yeah, well, we're gonna work on it, right?
Always. Why we need an awareness day.
There you go. May 20th. Uli, Jordan, anything to add to that?
It goes very hand in hand. I have not worked with accessibility teams, just individuals who implemented it, but it was very, very close and always supported each other. at the end of the day, what's good for users is good for search engines and vice versa. That's a general rule.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just small rip. I think on like Eric's focus, which is structured data. I think you have some accessibility opportunity by just really packing your structured data with information that may not be obvious to search engine crawlers. And so, if that's including, full body text or, just, information on video or closed captioning or anything of that nature, I think there's just a lot you can just pack up your structured data as much as possible. And I feel that will reflect positively on accessibility as well.
Cool.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yes.
When it comes down to like SEO and accessibility, both optimizing for the same tag, maybe an H1, let's say, or a title tag. Honestly, I think accessibility should always win. Google's so smart, right? Google, knows near related terms and concepts. There are so many SEOs out there who just pack something like that with keywords, or use an H1 in a way that you're not supposed to, or something like that. And so there can be times where it doesn't work well together, but usually that's because of an SEO. There are good middle grounds.
Very well said, Laura. I just got the notification that we got to wrap up, so I will ask all of you for your final thoughts.
Ooh.
You want to be called? We already have you on the screen, Laura, so why don't we start with you? Yeah.
Oh boy. I don't know. I think, if you're thinking about SEO and enterprise and what you need to spend on it and how you need to put it together, if you even need it, I think it's worth it's worth finding the right people to reach out to help you with that. It's worth taking the time to find the right people. Our industry is full of people who are fairly new to the game, I guess, I would say, and don't have the experience under their belts. And not to say that they wouldn't know, wouldn't be good for something like this. But there's a lot of SEO out there that's just, it's easy for anyone to say they can do SEO. So you really have to take the time to reach out to people and go word of mouth by like, who should I hire? SEO has so many disciplines. There's local, there's e-com, there's, me, I haven't touched code in 15 years, so, like there's so many different types of SEOs you can be looking at too, and SEO agencies you can be looking at. So definitely use word of mouth and find the right people to bring in order to figure all those questions out. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. The barrier to entry is very low to get into SEO, but to be good at it, the depth of this field is vast. It really is. So thank you for that. Eric?
I would just leave people with the final thought that your SEO is going to touch all the different parts of your business. Don't be afraid to include people in-house in the conversation, and just be prepared for a conversation at the beginning to make sure everybody's on the same page. It's most effective when you get everybody on board and when everybody is really focused on those business goals.
Thanks, Eric. Jordan?
Yeah, with SEO for enterprise, I think, especially if you're an enterprise level company and you haven't implemented SEO, a lot of times what really gets me excited is, there'll be a company that has, a domain that's many years old. They have amazing offsite SEO and they've never had an in-house SEO to optimize that. And so there's not just low-hanging fruit, but there's literally fruit rotting on the ground. And it's really tragic to see when some folks don't really see the value of SEO, especially on the enterprise level. It's like really hard to convey. Like, I understand, I want to get paid, but you definitely need this. Please, like, listen to me. So I think understanding who needs it and who doesn't on the enterprise level, for sure, I think it's a strong suit for SEOs to understand, to go through the vetting process and really understand who needs it and who doesn't.
Great point. Thank you, Jordan. Uli?
Yeah, so I would say if you go the agency route, I would recommend an agency who's experienced in your industry, at least whether it's e-commerce or B2B or content site. That as a minimum, ideally even more in your industry. It's a lot easier to work with them. They just get faster up to speed. If you go in-house, let's say if you want to decide to hire from within, there are agencies out there who help you train that in-house person to become more an expert in in-house SEO. Let's say if it is, someone from marketing, but again, then an external agency can help you develop that person into becoming a full-time SEO. And let's say if you hire an external in-house SEO to become that in-house person, then again, I would also look for someone ideally who's experienced, but it's not a must. But for that person, what I find is important is that this person is comfortable speaking, just outspoken and is confident to just get others excited on this, confident to insert him or herself into meetings. Because in the beginning, it can be, as I said in the beginning, it can be disruptive.
Sure.
And so the person should connect well with others. I find that important.
Great. Thank you. That's excellent points. Well, I really enjoyed this panel with all of you. I could hang out with you all day. Hopefully we will soon, but it's 11 o'clock. So with that, I thank all of you for joining. I would like to let you know that we're going to have a recording of all of this. It will be shared on social media. And final call out, May 20th is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Please check out on Twitter. You'll see tons of events going on. So that's #GAAD. And you can also go to globalaccessibilityawarenessday.org, where you can submit your events and see the events that are coming up. And this year, we're going to try and segregate out the different languages. So if you want to hear it in your mother tongue, you will be able to do that as well. And with that, I will bid you all a wonderful day. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.